Welcome, Nicky. Welcome. I'm glad you could join on the podcast. We were already having a great conversation, so I'm glad we're doing this. And so, yeah, if you could just introduce yourself, a little bit about your background and your story, and where you're from and where you're going.
Andres, first of all, thanks for having me on the show. It's a pleasure and an honor. Um, my background is I'm originally an immigrant from the Middle East. I'm a Christian from Iran. When I was just 11 years old, the Islamic Revolution took place in Iran. And my late father, God rest his soul, he could see the writing on the wall. This was not going to be a place to raise a Christian family. So he and my mother, they got together, they made a plan, and eventually they got us out of Iran and we settled eventually where I now live in Toronto, Canada. Now, at the time I was 11 and I didn't want to leave my friends. I didn't want to leave my home. But in retrospect, it was the single greatest thing my father could have done for me and for our whole family. He took us from a legacy of tyranny to a legacy of freedom. Now, why is that important? Well, first and foremost, I think inside every human breast beats the living heart of freedom. We all want to have the freedom to choose our own path, to make our own way. Living in a tyrannical country, I can tell you living in a free country is better. And I say this to everyone in America. I know you're currently in Colombia, but you're from Texas originally, which is a state that values its freedom greatly, historically speaking, and was born in blood and fire and revolution for freedom. That you should be very careful about the people that are trying to take your freedoms away, that are saying that free speech is bad because you don't want to offend or hurt people's feelings. Well, freedom is the right to offend and the right to be offended. And that's just how it goes. And I think all of us need to stand up for freedom and not let anybody censor our speech for any reason, because that's the road to taking your freedoms away. It's death by 1,000 cuts. And as a person who lived in Iran, where people would run for presidency and run for office, and the guy who would win would then jail him, shoot him, and prevent him, I think every American should be very afraid of the leading presidential candidate. I'm not saying you need to agree with this guy or like him or anything, but the guy in power should not have the right to go after his leading opponent in an election, because that is the road to fascism, to tyranny. We all need to stand up for freedom, in my opinion. If you're an entrepreneur and you don't believe in freedom, then you don't have free enterprise. Without free enterprise, you can't grow and build a business. You're dependent on the government for favors. Who wants that? You don't want favors from the government. You want the government out of your way so you can make your own dreams come true. My father believed this. God rest his soul. He was an entrepreneur's entrepreneur, but he was also a man with a huge heart, Andres. If you knew him and you were trying to get a job, he would sit you in his office and he would make calls to all his business owner buddies until he got you a job. He'd browbeat them. He says, come on, you gotta hire this guy. I don't know. As a personal favor to me, you're hiring this guy. And then, you know what I mean? And these guys go, okay, Napoleon. His name was Napoleon. He had the coolest name ever, right? Napoleon, man, like regal name. And he'd tell you, Andres, you're the director of marketing at so-and-so corporation. You started an hour. Go. You know what I mean? And you just go, oh, thank you, Napoleon. Then you get out of there and you get it done. And you were trying to start a business. In 6 months, you came back to me. You go, Napoleon, I'm trying to start a business. You go, okay, let's sit down. What's the business all about? And he'd sit down, listen to you, mentor you. He'd find you access to capital. He'd get you access to clients, even get you some clients, because he believed in people so much. And then if he knew you, and let's say you were trying to buy a car, you were trying to buy a house, you went to the bank and they said, yeah, well, this is the most we're going to give you. And you needed some more. My dad would give you a loan that he'd never allow you to pay back so you could buy that car or that house. That's the kind of man that he was. And people say to me, man, this is not true. You're BSing me. No, I'm telling you the truth. This is the kind of people today. He's been dead for almost 4 years. People today still come to me and go, you're Napoleon Billou's son? Let me tell you what he did for me. And then they come shake my hand. I've never seen them. I don't know them. They go, it's an honor to shake the hand of Napoleon Billou's son. And I'm like, I'm nobody, man. That's him. I'm like, dude, I appreciate it. But, I'm very proud of my dad too. But that's who he was. I wanted to be just like him, man. I wanted to be a man that people looked up to. I wanted to be a man who was there for people. My father would always say to me, son, life is about people. It's not about money or numbers. Even business is not about money or numbers. I go, Dad, whoa, what are you talking about, man? I was a kid. I was like smart alecky. Of course, business is about money. Dad, it's about numbers. You have to calculate the money and the numbers. And he goes, son, true. But without people, there'd be no business. There'd be no money. Business is about solving problems for people. And then you earn the right to make a profit. If you solve problems for people, you earn the right to make a profit. That's the purpose of business. Imagine a Venn diagram. People, problems, profit, and where all three intersects, the purpose of business. That's what my dad taught me. And my friend, I learned from my father. I took the torch from him when he passed, the Billou torch. Believe in people, adore people, pour into them, love them. Every human being suffers from self-doubt. Every human being suffers from not believing in themselves fully, especially when they've had a bad day, a week, month, year, decade. And all every human being needs, and my dad taught me this, is someone to believe in them, someone to see for them what they can't see, to show them that they're enough, that they matter, and that someone cares enough about them. Spark that flame of belief inside them until it turns into a roaring, raging fire. And then they need to learn how to be able to enroll other people in their visions and their dreams. So many people go into business and they're scared of being seen as pushy or salesy or reeking of commission breath. And I don't blame them. No one wants to be that 1960s, 50s style, full of rush salesman, doing all that crap. But you know what, man? My dad taught me sales doesn't have to be that way. Sales can be an act of love and respect and caring and service. So I took it from selling to serving. I reframed it. Sales became service. And when I taught people this, my clients, they didn't learn anything else at the beginning but this. They would double their income, they triple their income, quadruple it, because they came from love, they came from caring, and they would not hold themselves back from talking to people they should be talking to. Because when they did that, some charlatan marketer would come in, swoop the business, and take it away. And everybody would lose. You would lose because you wouldn't get the business. The client would lose because they didn't get their problem solved. And even the charlatan loses because what goes around comes around. God will not let your bad deeds go unpunished. And I'm saying this to anybody. If you're basically a good person, keep being a good person. You know what I'm saying? And if you're not a good person, shame on you, become a good person, start doing good things, because God will come to you. The piper will need to be paid. And that's what I say. That's what I believe, man. That's my opening monologue.
That's awesome. Honestly, I think, like when I love seeing guys speak about their fathers, it's always very like everybody has a role model growing up. And that's why I find it's impossible to raise a young boy without having a good father in the household. And obviously now I feel like we're realizing that a little bit more. And just hearing you speak about your father, I can tell he was a great man. So, having that presence is always important. And he obviously taught you freedom. He taught you freedom of speech, right? And that's something that obviously I was raised on. It's not something that everybody was raised on. But I mean, just for example, this podcast, right? Like that's why I started doing this, because I feel like I can't trust the news at the moment. I can't. There's different platforms I can't trust. So I was like, well, let me take some initiative and actually play my part in however small of a role it may be, right? So freedom of speech to me is important, and there's different forms of that. Like I'm a big fan of stand-up comedy and things like that for reasons related. But yeah, that's great. I think I guess my question is, what aspects, right, of your father are something that you choose to see? Because there's positives and negatives to every person, right? So I think one thing that I've realized is like every man goes through a process, right, of thinking that their father is the best person in the world, and then realizing, oh, like he is human as well, right? And so not, obviously I'm not asking you what negative things your father has, but what what are things that you have taken from your father, and what are things that you don't necessarily want to follow from your father footsteps, and not necessarily as a negative thing, but something that you have said, this is who I am as a person, and I'm not just gonna, I'm taking ownership of my life, and I'm setting myself apart. I'm my own individual, because there's sort of a point in a man's life, right, where you realize that you need, like, no one's coming to help. Like, this is, I need to set what my standard is for my life. Um, and like I said, in the beginning, it's influenced heavily by your father, but in the future, hopefully you can sort of bring that into your own fruition. So,
So Justin Sterling, who is the leading thought leader when it comes to men, manhood, and masculinity in the world. He's in his late 70s, does something called the Sterling Men's Weekend. There's one coming up in March. Highly recommend you go do it. Highly recommend every man goes and does it. It's in Northern California. And here's one thing that Justin Sterling, among many things, taught me. He taught me about the four stages of a son's relationship with his father. In the first stage, his father can do no wrong. I mean, his father is the greatest thing in the world. He's a hero. He wants to be around him. He wants to be him, and everything is there. In the second stage, he starts to want to seek some independence. You know what I mean? Still wants to be around his dad, but wants some independence and wants to create uh, his own version of life. And then in the third stage is what we call the fuck you dad stage, where he basically, fuck you dad. Everything dad does at that point is wrong. And he basically goes out like the prodigal son in the Bible to chart his own path and create his own way. But then later in life, he starts to realize the greatness of his father, the genius of his father. And then he brings that back. And he starts to see that who he is in a big way. A big part of it is who his father is, who his father has been for him, has made him the man that he is, and has prepared him for life. And he realizes that all the ways his father was tough on him and loving to him were all designed to prepare him to win in life, to prepare him for success. And then the last stage of a father's relationship with the son is when the son prepares his father for death, because he lets his father know that his father did a great job and that his father did his job and prepared him for life and prepared him for success. And for me, when my father was near the end of his life, I sat down with him, and he was in a hospital. He'd had heart attacks and strokes. Uh, to see this great big bear of a man waylaid like that was heartbreaking for me, to say the least. But I sat with him and I told him, Dad, I want you to know that I love you and that everything that I am is because of you. You have made me a man of integrity, of honor, of friendship, of loyalty, of love. You have made me a man who has developed his intellect and developed his health. And my dad developed his health, but was also hard on himself physically. It's one of the things that I took on, is I was much better than he was with health. And I told him that it was an honor to have his blood flowing through my veins. And I wanted him to know that he did his job, did it better than any man ever could. And he started to cry. It was an emotional moment for him, and it was an emotional moment for me. And we hugged and we kissed. And my dad knew how I felt. And I think that's your job as a son with your father, is to let him know that. Now, there's a lot of men who have shitty relationships with their fathers. And the last 60 years have been really hard on men because, the forces of godless communism came into the West, the free West, especially America, and started to mess with its freedoms by putting in infiltrators, willing accomplices, to mess with the American way of life. And they've been successful beyond their wildest dreams, unfortunately. And one of the things that they wanted to do was weaken men, weaken manhood, weaken masculinity, and weaken the bonds between men and women and fathers and sons. So, a lot of sons have been feminized, overly mothered, not fathered enough, not allowed to fail, because even fathers have been treating them the way mothers would treat them. And many boys have been angry with their dads, like angry for years, decades. The great Elon Musk, I just read his biography by Walter Isaacson, does not have a current relationship with his father, and he calls his father a bad man, an evil man, of this, of that, and the other. And I don't know if Elon Musk is ever going to see the show. Probably not. But here's what I have to say to Elon. You're 50% your father. And who you are, the drive you have for excellence and success, is created because of your father. It didn't happen in a vacuum. It didn't happen by accident. And after I read the book, it was very obvious to me that his father had a lot to do with his growth and his success. And he doesn't want to admit it. And he's cut himself off from his dad. And to me, that's a super sad thing, because it hurts him. And then one of his children has decided that he's now 16 and transition, which is absolutely insane. No child under 18 should be allowed to do that. He has a shitty relationship with one of his kids. And
what's the story behind him and his father? I haven't read his book.
it's longer than we probably want to get into, but
Mm,
basically his father was a conflicted and troubled man, let's put it that way, and
mm,
was hard on his wife, hard on the kids, hard on him.
mm.
But so what? So freaking what? That's what I have to say. You know what I mean? So what?
Yeah, I
His
think
journey, he was on it. And the truth of the matter is that as hard as he was on Elon, he toughened him up. He toughened that man up. And as a result, he is probably the single most consequential human being on earth right now. He's the richest man on earth, but that's not what's important. What's important is he's got these grand visions that he drives himself insanely in order to make come alive. Look at what he's done with Tesla. Tesla basically brought electric automotive into the world. No other company had done it. No other company would have done it. Tesla did it because of Elon Musk. Elon Musk is who he is, bringing Tesla into the world because of his dad. Then there's also SpaceX. Right now, space flight in the world, all the innovations are not coming from NASA. They're not coming from the cosmonaut program in Russia or from the Chinese space program. They're coming from SpaceX. Why? Because of Elon Musk. And you've got
private
Neuralink.
market.
Right. Neuralink. Neuralink is holding out the possibility that people paralyzed in wheelchairs are going to be able to freaking walk due to
Mm.
this AI-driven Neuralink chamber. Like, I don't know if that's going to happen anytime soon or not, but the vision about making that happen, beyond making that happen, comes from Elon Musk. And if Elon Musk thinks, "Hey, man, I did this independent of my dad," screw you, you didn't do it independent of your dad. It's because of your dad being so damn hard on you. It's because of the emotions he riled up in you. You become this demon-driven dude who runs over any obstacle and gets things done.
Mm.
Every son listening to this, I'm here to tell you, if you hate your dad right now, get the fuck over it. Get the fuck over it. Appreciate that what he did, how hard he was on you, prepared you for life. You're a man. You were a boy. Your dad's job wasn't to coddle you. Maybe it wasn't to be super mean to you all the time, but even if he was, that's just the way it is. His job was to prepare you to become a man and to go out there and be able to stand on your own 2 feet and take care of your family and do shit. And I say this to every man here, every man listening to this. I know this isn't a men's podcast, but that's your dad's job. And if he wasn't a perfect dad, what you owe him is you owe him thanks for helping bring you into this fucking world. You wouldn't exist without him. So show some respect and shut the fuck up.
I
Not
think
that I have
we've
opinions about this or anything.
yeah, I think we've lost all semblance of self-reliance in today's culture. Like, I feel like at the core of all malice today is the lack of self-reliance. I mean, because just with what you're talking about, right? Like, how can you blame like, are you a grown adult or are you a child? Like, are you gonna blame your parents for something that's happened in your life, or are you gonna, pull up your bootstraps, yeah, as they say. So, and it can be in any aspect of life, right? I mean, if you're walking down the street and you're insecure about what somebody thinks of you, it's like, okay, you're not being self-reliant, right? You're saying what that person believes is more important than what I believe about myself. And that's just lacking all self-reliance, initiative, and self-respect, to be honest, right? So um, it's that's why all this, in my opinion, all this sort of woke culture, all this stuff that's going on is just um, it's just
Fuck.
degradation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I joke that, like, I'm in Colombia now, right? It's just like, it's funny how when you leave the US, like, a woman is a woman and a man is a man again, like, it's almost every country except maybe, the UK, the US and Canada, there's a few, whatever, Western Europe maybe, but, everywhere else, like, they haven't lost it completely. Maybe like Argentina, they're the snowflakes of the Latin American world,
That's
but
Angel, man. They elected Abby May as their
yeah,
president.
man, it's
That
pretty,
that
and
dude, the
I'm pretty
baddest
excited.
ass president of any country in the fucking world. He makes Donald Trump look like a pussy. That's how great
Yeah,
Javier Milei is.
and he's a libertarian, so, like, kudos
Hardcore
to him.
libertarian.
Yeah, kudos to him for having run, because that party in Argentina was not established at all. It's sort of like the Libertarian Party in the US, you know what I mean? And for him to have come up through that, that's my respects. And he's actually, like, the day after becoming president, he kept to his word. Like, that's, for a politician, that's rare, I feel. So, and that's happening a lot if you've noticed, like Bukele, my family's from El Salvador,
Love
like,
him.
yeah,
Love him.
he, he certain authoritarian tendencies, we'll see where it goes, right? But like so far we've had like almost a year worth of no homicides, gang related homicides in El Salvador. And then
They
uh
basically shut down MS-13. They're nothing in El Salvador anymore. They used to be like a state within a state, practically.
yeah, there you go. And for a country that's so small, it's funny that they're on the map, but yeah, we'll see how that goes. But back to Malay, we'll see how the next 4 or 5 years, whatever their presidential time is. But yeah, it's an interesting thing. I don't know what's going on. It's like I have more faith in those two countries than I have in the US at the moment, which is a sad thing to say, you know what I mean? I mean, I'm always going to be a patriot, and I'm a Texan, so I can't say otherwise, but yeah, we'll see how things go. So,
Well, America is still the beacon for the world. And I think every patriotic American needs to be cheering for the election of Donald Trump in this coming election. Whether you like him or not is irrelevant, but he represents a traditional view of America, an America that believes in freedom and democracy and free elections. And his opponents they're the enemies of freedom. They're the fucking enemies of freedom. It's absolutely insane. I never thought I would see in America or Canada um, the leading opposition party for president be attacked by his enemies so vociferously through legal means to try and prevent him from taking office. That's absolutely insane. That's
mm,
absolutely fucking insane. And I mean, in Colorado yesterday, the Supreme Court voted to kick him off the ballot. And are you kidding me? That should not happen in America. Absolutely should not happen in America. And they think this is going to make people support him less. It's not. It's fucking not. And the truth of the matter is that the more the people see how blatantly the forces of evil are trying to stop a man from participating in an election, the more likely they're going to be to rally around him and help him win the election. That's my belief. And I pray to God every day I'm right, because if America loses freedom, if it's lost in America, within 30 years, there will be no freedom anywhere else in the world. Don't kid you.
no, I agree. I mean, I can't stand it sometimes when people are always like, "Oh, look at this European country," or say Germany. They're investing in sustainable electricity, say solar power, and all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, you can afford to invest some money into that. Even well, if you want to talk about Germany, the fact that they've closed down all their nuclear power plants was the dumbest decision they've ever made. But
Ever.
setting that aside, and their complete dependence on Russia now. Um, like the fact that you can do that is because you're riding on the back of the US, and the fact that they will have to, through NATO and such, protect you from some invasion from Russia, or any threat like that, right? It's it's like they're trying to speak down to us, but it's like, hey, we're the world's safekeeper, we're the world's protection. So it's not exactly it's a bit hypocritical in my opinion. So yeah.
100%. 100%, Andres.
Mm. Yeah, I don't know. I That's why I'm interested in all this men's work stuff, and sort of an implication that I feel, and I'm interested in your opinion, is the more um, masculine men that there is in the US, right, then the more we can make sure to get back on track, and have that leadership that we need to move in the right direction, and move forward, right? There's I feel like we've come through a dip, and we can come out the other side better, right? Because there are things that were negative of the old way of doing things, um that we can do better. But sometimes things have been the way they are for thousands of years for a reason, right? That's the way that's just the way the world works. So
Look, what's happening in the Western world right now is not natural and organic. It is a deliberate strategy on the part of the enemies of freedom to destroy freedom in the United States and then in the Western world more generally, so they can take him over without firing a shot.
Hmm.
You should go on YouTube and watch a long form video by a former KGB officer named Yuri Bezmenov, whose job it was to destabilize Western countries. And then he defected to the West. And he'll tell you that even the winning the Cold War was just a battle in the fight between tyranny and freedom. And he said, you think you won the war, you didn't, you won a battle, because they had seeded all of these internal enemies in the US. I was a teenager in the 80s. There was none of this bullshit going on in Canada and the US. There was none of this transgender he, she crap going on. There was no opposition to people speaking whatever they wanted to speak. Free speech was understood as an unalloyed good. And today, Marxism is the order of the day. And we all got to push back and tell those guys to go fuck themselves. Javier Miller said it best. Don't give these socialist shits one fucking inch. And I agree. They're going to try to make you agree with something they say, and then they're going to try to take a mile. And what you need to do when a socialist says something, what a progressivism is racism. Progressivism is hate. You need to say that. You need to say, if you're progressive, you're a hateful piece of shit. Everything out of your mouth I disagree with. Shut the fuck up. Go away. I'm going to drive you from the public square. That's my goal. I want progressivism driven from the public square. I want Marxism and communism driven from the public square. It should not be allowed to come back in the public square. We can have disagreements, around things like the level of government intervention in people's lives and society. Those are all fine. But Marxism, where freedom encroaches, that has got to stop right fucking now. Because the whole goal of the Marxists, by doing all that shit, having the government encroach economically, was to make it okay so they could then encroach in all the other areas of life that they wanted to encroach in. So we got to put a stop to that.
yeah, I mean, and I feel like it's important to distinguish between, this Marxist agenda, sort of this, let's call it the leftist agenda, and then just let's say the view of a standard Democrat, right, in the US, right? And I hate to be sometimes bipartisan, but it is the reality of the US at the moment. And it's like, if you take, I don't know, the ideas of JFK or something like that, and you compare it to the agendas of some of these left-leaning politicians today, it's night and day. So it's like, right, the entire bell curve has been shifted, or maybe flattened, right? Because we've become so extreme polarized on either side.
Yeah.
And part of it, I feel like, is this, the bipartisan system that we have in the US. I mean, a lot of other countries have multiple party systems and such, and you can argue the efficacy of those systems, but something needs to be done, right? And to a degree, you can't really have, like, it jails you a little bit, right? It restricts you, because then, if you say, oh, I'm a Republican, then all this stuff is assumed about you, right? And say, like Malay, let's say, okay, you're a libertarian, like, there is no party for you. It's sort of difficult to be a centrist in any capacity nowadays. So yeah, it's just
Look,
people are being put into boxes.
I don't call myself a Republican.
Mhm.
I support broadly the values of the Republican Party. I call myself a freedom lover. I'm a freedom man. That's who I am. These days, that tends to be Republicans in America. Wasn't always this way, but it is now. As far as I'm concerned, you got to be in favor of freedom. Otherwise, how can you have a business that works? If
Mhm.
people are listening to this show are interested in growing their business, your business won't grow without you having the freedom to make it grow.
Yeah, I mean, you just it's one of those things where it's like you have 2 options. You can complain about it, or you can shut the fuck up and choose the option that is gonna give you freedom, right? You can hate the guy or whatever, but, like, do what you gotta do, right? Like,
Vote
pick
Trump.
this.
Vote Trump. Honestly, right now, it doesn't matter if you've never voted Republican in your life.
Mm.
If you believe in freedom, if you believe in America, you got to vote Trump. You cannot do anything other than vote Trump. It's got to be such an overwhelmingly large victory for him that they can't ignore it.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't really see any of the other I mean, there's a few other candidates that I would like over him, but I don't really see him he's got such a, fixed base in the US that I don't really see any other Republican candidate, getting through the primaries and such, so,
They won't.
yeah.
He's the nominee.
But, let's do a little bit of a change then, a little change of topics here. Can you just speak a little bit about, sort of your business journey and how you have helped people go through their business journey, and also just, your personal experience and what your work is about?
So I want to see entrepreneurs win. I think for freedom to be successful, we need more rich people, more multimillionaires and billionaires. I have this thing I call hashtag billion millionaires and hashtag million billionaires. So around the world right now, we have about 40 million millionaires and we have about 5,000 billionaires. Those numbers are too low, from my point of view. Like, and I am pushing hard to make more millionaires. Now, I personally helped 11 people add over 7 to 9 figures to their business, and over like 80 people add, low 6 to high 6 figures to their business. That's kind of my thing. And my goal over the next year is I want 10 new millionaires as a result of my work. And I got this thing I call Mission 40. I'm looking for 40 people with families who are good people, who are entrepreneurs, who maybe make 100,000 a year. They should add a zero to them. You know what I'm talking about, Andres? They should add a zero to that, right? Like Andres, wouldn't you like to add a zero to your income in 2024? Would
I think
that not be
anybody would.
anybody would, but I'm asking you specifically. You would love that, wouldn't you? That would
Of
be like
course.
fantastic for you. I want that for you, Andres. That's my goal. I do this through my superpowers, which are loving on people, believing in people, pouring into people, showing them how to be master enrollers, and then showing them how to stand out. I got the best methodology in the world for how to be seen as the go-to authority, as the thought leader in your space. I'll give you an example of one of my clients. His name was Carl Kramer. It's one of the people that we turned into millionaires. So Carl, when I met him, was 57 years old. You're older than I am now. And he had been an executive vice president of a manufacturing company in Canada. He made $350,000 a year, good salary, but he was burnt out. He wanted out. So he got into coaching, business coaching, but he only made $70,000 a year as a business coach. And he came to us and he said, Nicky, I hear you've done this for some people I know. Can you do it for me? I go, yeah, I can do it for you. He said, well, let's talk. So we talked. I said, what's your goal? I said, I just want to make what I used to make as an executive vice president, but as a coach, because, I hated being an executive vice president at the end and I love being a coach. And I don't want to work super hard. I want to work maybe 30 hours a week at the most. All right. Okay, Carl, what kind of coaching? Your business coaching. Okay, what kind of business coaching? Well, anything. I help anybody with anything in business. That's me. I'm Carl. You're not standing out there, brother. You sound like everybody else. You can do anything for everybody. Nobody will believe that. And he said, what should we do? I said, well, Carl, let's come up with a niche market strategy. What does that mean? That means narrow your focus. I'm like, all right, all right. Took us a few iterations, but we got him to lawyers. And not just any lawyers, but solo practitioner lawyers who owned their own
Mhm.
firm, who had at least 7 figures coming in every year, but wanted to have Eight. So Carl said, I'm going to help you double, triple your business. And brother, within 6 months of us figuring this out, he went from making 70,000 a year to making 500,000 a year, working 25 hours a week. Instead of 60 hours a week, executive vice president, he worked 25 hours a week as a coach, and he made 500,000, not 70,000. For a
So the
while, he thought
secret
he
is
wanted to make it.
niche.
He didn't want to work that hard. He didn't want to work that hard, so he dropped back down to 500,000. 500,000 was a lot more. That's the
So
power of focusing on a niche. Having someone believe in you, having someone spark that flame, that fire of belief inside you until it turned into a roaring fire of its own. And you believed in yourself. That's what we did for Carl. And we showed him how to niche, how to be a thought leader, the go-to guy for solo practitioner law firms in Ontario and Canada. And
just in Ontario. Wow.
I'm looking for 40 people. Yeah, man, that's 500,000 a year. Dude, you can make 500,000 a year working in Colombia with only Colombians. I'm looking for 40 people, good people. They're ready to go to the next level. They want to add that zero to their income. That's who they are. That's what they want to do. That's who I'm looking for. And we got this thing. We show people, and Andres, maybe you're free tomorrow. You should come check this out, because I'm doing this tomorrow with my mentor who used to work with Tony Robbins as his director of coaching and training. And we're doing 90 minutes from 1:30 to 3 Eastern. We're going to be doing this a few times over the year, where we're going to show you how to use the power of being a guest on somebody's podcast to make money. And we're going to show you how to turn next year into a year you're going to make more money than you've ever made before. We want you to kick off the year with a 90K in 90 days challenge. Could you use an extra $90,000 in 90 days to start the year off? Of course you could.
Be
Who
stupid
couldn't?
if I said no.
Right. So let's roll, man. Let's be there. Let's make it happen. That's what we all got to do. We got to make it happen. We got to go for it. And I love on people. I believe in people. My mission is mission 40. Give me 40 great people and I will do it. I'll make it happen for them. Let's go. Alibaba and the 40 Thieves. We're going to be the mission 40 people, baby. You can call me Ali. That'll be my nickname.
I love it. I love it. And this is happening next year, or then January, 90 days?
Yeah, that is. But we're doing a talk tomorrow, man. Might be too soon for this thing, but this podcast to come up, but it can't be too soon for you. You should join us.
I'll be there. Send me the info.
Love it. I'll email you the registration form. Let's do it.
Awesome. So what do you see as the difference between, the mindset of 10 to $90,000 a year to extra or however, or just replacing your income? Say you're in a 9-to-5, you want to replace that. What's the difference between that mindset or the type of work that you're doing in that range to the 500,000 to $1 million to 8-9 figures? I guess I'm sure it changes as you go higher, but
I'm going to tell you this. It's a very interesting question. It all comes down to belief. You see, if you believe you can make 100,000 a year, then you're going to make 100,000 a year because you believe in it. But if you don't believe you can make 500,000 a year, doesn't matter how good the methodologies and strategies are that come your way, you're not going to do it. It's just not going to happen. So I'll tell you the story of another young man. His name was Dan. Dan was a personal fitness trainer. When I met him, he was 25. And Andres, you would have liked Dan. He was a good dude. Just a good dude. But he was broke as shit. You know what I'm saying? He made $13,000 to $18,000 a year. 18,000 was a good year, right? $13,000 was a normal year. And he said, I want to make 100,000 a year, Nicky, man. I hear you can do it for me. I'm like, hey. So Danny, you're a personal fitness trainer. Yeah. What do you do to help people? Who do you help? Oh, Nicky, man, I can help anybody with anything. You want to lose weight? I'm your man. You want to build muscle? I'm your man. I can do it all. And I'm like, I said, we need to narrow your focus. He goes, okay, doctors. My dad's a doctor. I love doctors. I love my dad. Well, why else? He says, well, they make a lot of money. I go, no, dude, you can't be going for the money. People smell that shit. They're not going to want to work with you. No, I'm doing it. 6 months, minimal results. Danny, we got to change. It's not working. Okay. You're right. Cardiologist. What money in the dark? Danny did not get it. You can't be about the money. I'm doing it. 6 months later, no results. But in the meantime, serendipity, God sent Danny a man named Papito, who was a Paralympic athlete from Cuba. Lost a leg when he was a child in an accident. So Papito and Danny worked well together. Helped him win some medals at some upcoming games. Big deal. And he comes to me all sheepish. He's going, okay, Nicky, man, I'm sorry. You know what? You've been trying to tell me this. I just haven't been listening. I said, well, I've been telling you that you haven't been listening, Danny. He says, well, you've been telling me not to go after the money. I go, yeah, I have. And I didn't listen. No, you didn't. He said, but I started working with Papito, and I really think I can help people with missing limbs. I think I want to go help people with missing limbs. Nobody else is trying to help them, and I know how to get them to work out, get in shape. So Andres, within 6 weeks, Danny, who had 7 clients, at his height had 7 clients at once. The height of his success. In 6 weeks, he signed 400 new clients. 400.
Wow.
400. He went from making barely $1,000 a month to making over $100,000 a month. He no longer was able to take people one-on-one because 400 people, impossible, right? Impossible.
He trained somebody else to work with them?
He actually started doing online coaching instead.
Mm.
But dude, why? Nobody else was going after missing limbs as a target market. Why? Because they all thought, oh, these people don't have arms and legs. They can't work out. And what Danny's message is, hey, you can do anything anybody else can do. Can you imagine how strong a message that is to someone with a missing limb? Maybe doesn't fully believe in themselves. Maybe feels sorry for themselves. Maybe just needed someone to believe in them. Yeah, that's been the theme of this episode, hasn't it? Someone believe in you. That's how come 400 people signed up with him, Andres.
I think everybody needs somebody to depend on. I mean, you can't forget, obviously, like I was saying before, sort of that self-reliance aspect, but there's nothing wrong with sort of finding somebody to work with and to help you figure out where you need to go, right? I mean, this guy, obviously, that's what he did with you, right? And it doesn't have to be for business. It can be for personal problems and things like that. But
Look,
I guess sort of getting some.
You got to do it yourself.
Hmm.
You can't do it alone, but you got to do it yourself. We all need other people. This is a social experience. Life is meant to be a social experience, not a do-it-yourself, by yourself forever experience. People who do that become hermits. People who do that become like the freaking Unabomber.
Go crazy.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
That for you?
Yeah.
Everybody needs that. You got to be, self-reliance is important, but self-reliance doesn't mean no people. It just means that you don't expect somebody to do the work you want to do, but you do want help. You do want advice. You do want encouragement. Everyone needs that.
I call it, or I was reading this book and it was saying it's the butcher and the baker, right? The butcher is self-reliant and knows how to do his job and does what he needs to do. And same goes for the baker, but the baker needs meat and the butcher needs bread. So, right. It's like, it's a symbiotic relationship, not an, interdependent, right? Relationship. So.
Yes, sir.
And going back to your example of your friend, of the trainer, he Yeah, Danny, thank you. He, I guess he just exemplifies another aspect that I often, mention to people like, the reason I'm actually thinking of a friend of mine where he's like, "Man, I just wanna help people." And he's like, "I need to make a bunch of money so then afterwards I can go be philanthropist." And I'm like, "I think you can help people
Now,
while you're making money now, right?" And man, I've tried to convince him so many times and he refuses. And if you're listening, hopefully hopefully this helps. But like I really feel that I mean, just like free market capitalism can be, be helpful to the world, and being an entrepreneur is helpful to the world, and you can make a positive change to the world through your work and still make a living through it, and good things come to good people, right? So it's comes full cycle there.
look, without capitalism, without a flow of money, your ability to do good in the world is limited. Limited. The people that are able to do the most are the ones with the most resources. Elon Musk just put up $100 million in seed money to start a new university, a STEM university in Texas. $100 million.
Chump
Elon Musk
change.
did that. Elon Musk did that. How many other people can do that? I can't write $100 million check. You can't write $100 million check. Elon Musk could. Elon Musk has made electric vehicles a reality. Tesla makes more electric vehicles than all the other car companies combined, and their relentless innovation is what has brought that into the 21st century, kicking and screaming. Yeah, he's made billions from it, but without him having done this, it wouldn't exist. He deserves to make billions from it. He deserves to.
What do you think his motivation is? Because, just going back to what you were saying about his father and all that, and you often hear a lot of entrepreneurs saying how there's a common denominator of sort of having a struggling childhood, whether it be, everything from like bullying to, having alcoholic parents or something like that. Um, but and so that could potentially be a motivator, and I don't think that's a good motivator, right? I mean, hopefully he's worked through that, but like, and he doesn't seem to be motivated by money at all, right? Because I don't know if you saw what happened recently, where he just, the told the CEO of Disney to go fuck
Hey,
off, and
go fuck
right?
yourself.
Yeah.
When you're the richest man in the world, you can do that.
I feel like anybody could do that, right? Like if like
No, but
you
when you're the richest man in the
right.
world, when someone tries to fuck with you by saying, I won't give you money, you have to say, okay, go fuck yourself.
Well, I'm just saying more so like keeping an attitude of, because a lot of times people self incarcerate, or I don't know what the right word would be, but they sort of hold themselves back, right? There's like, oh no, I can't quit this job because XYZ. And it's like, no, all like in reality, all you need to do is walk in, say, hey, I quit, and then you walk out, right? Like that's all it would take. Obviously there's practicalities and results to that, but hey, you're a self-reliant adult that can handle situations and such. But I digress. But yeah, what do going back to my question, what do you think his motivation is? If it's not money, it's not his father, it's not,
Elon Musk's motivations, like any man's motivations, are complex. But at the core of it is there's a boy who wants to prove to the world, to his father, to the culture that he grew up in South Africa when he was a boy, that um, you can't push me around and I'm somebody to be reckoned with. I think there's a part of that that's there. Another part of his motivation is I think he's a genuinely curious and bright man who looks at things the way they are and goes, this sucks. He thinks of ways to change them. And he wants to end the world's reliance on fossil fuels. He believes that fossil fuels, uh, in the short term, in the medium term, are fine, but in the long term, we're going to run out of them. Number one is his belief in And there's going to be a point where they're going to be causing more troubles than they don't. I think in the abstract, he's correct, although even electric cars as currently designed are really an indulgence over a, a gasoline powered car. Would I consider buying an electric car? The only one that I'd consider buying is the Tesla Cybertruck.
Hmm.
And for reasons other than it's electric. The electric part is a side benefit. And it's not even a benefit to me. It's a feature, but it's not a benefit. But I think he genuinely wants to change the world. He created SpaceX because he wants us to be a interplanetary species. He thinks there's going to be a point we're going to need to find other places to live other than Earth. Is he right? I actually think he's wrong. I think Earth is going to be fine, but being an interplanetary species gives us options. So in that respect, I think he's right. These are the things that seem to drive him. And he's a man with a lot of storms in his soul and ideas bubbling up in his head. And he's constantly looking for ways to make the world better. And fuck that. He is really the most successful capitalist when it comes to taking some of these ideas and making them come alive since Steve Jobs. To me, Steve Jobs is the most successful capitalist in history. What he created with Apple is a company that's still growing strong. And he put a successor in place that has allowed that company to continue to grow. I don't think that Elon's done that. I think that without Elon, none of his companies would do well. But, you know, he's an interesting fellow. There's a lot to be learned from him. When he told the advertisers to go fuck themselves, I said, Elon, to myself, you know, if I can get him to listen to me, I think that you replace the revenue with Tesla by doing something out of the box that no other social media company or online platform is doing. You create a high-level subscription, an expensive subscription for entrepreneurs, and you call it An Hour with Elon. And every month, every week, Elon would spend an hour live on the Twitter Spaces or X Spaces, and he would answer questions from entrepreneurs about everything that it takes to become successful and grow. And I believe he could get between 10 and 100 million people, give him a subscription of $50 to $100 a month to learn how to be better entrepreneurs. So my vision of 1 billion millionaires, like with Elon's help, I think that could happen. I think that could happen. And I think he'd replace all the money he lost from these fucking advertisers and then some. Let's imagine people paying 50 or $100 a month and 100 million of them on the X platform are listening in to Elon's lessons. I think that'd be fucking amazing. At $100 a month, that's for 100 million people. And I really believe it could be that big. That many people could pay for 1 billion millionaires. The vision is 1 billion millionaires.
Mm-hmm.
Would you
I think people would pay more. I'd pay more than $100 a month.
Straight up, dude. There's 100 million people like you and me around the world who's going to fucking pay $100 a month to X to do it.
People forget how much 9 billion is, you know? If there's 9 billion people in this world, 100 million's not that much. Or, you know, so 1 million, yeah.
No.
You know, now that you were talking about...
This is going to be an episode on my podcast. I'm going to do a message to Elon. A message for Elon, billion millionaire. And I'll say, I can help you fucking make it happen. You've got the platform and the smarts to be able to get that many people to do it. I know what we got to do to get people excited about wanting to be part of those calls. And we record those calls. We turn them into modules. We turn them into a 12, 24 module framework over time that people can listen to. It'll be available on X. It'll be the biggest personal business success program in the history of the fucking world by a country fucking mile. 100 million people subscribing to it. And once you subscribe, you have access to the base modules of the program forever.
I like that idea of taking taking your
millionaires.
I love the idea of recording the podcast and turning that into a course or an online course. That way, you get two things out of one. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
So when you were talking about Elon earlier, something came to mind of,
By the way, I got like 3 minutes, then we got to jet.
all right, sounds good. So I just go off with one thing, right? Like, he seems to be a boy that never lost his like, a boy that turned into a man that never lost sort of that boyish, the boyish ideas. He wants to go to space and all these different things. But I read a study that said that they did in NASA in the 60s or something like that, wanted to find more geniuses. So they saw that when you're a child, there was like 70% geniuses. And then when you started growing older, it was like 50. And then as you became an adult, it became like 3% geniuses. So it's like the schooling system, and then
Making
just,
you-
right. So there's something to be said there where somehow he didn't lose it. But
Oh.
but in any case, do you want to share some of your socials, where people can find you, all that good stuff?
My name is unique, Nicky Billou, at Nicky Billou on any social media platform. But if you're an entrepreneur, you should get on my calendar. You should talk about becoming one of the Mission 40 members. And the way to do that is to go to eCircleacademy.com/appointment. Make an appointment with me. Let's talk. Let's fucking set you up to add a 0 to your income next year. Let's roll.
I love it. All right, Nikki. Well, thanks so much for joining me. It was a pleasure talking, and hopefully we can do this again. This was fun.
Yeah, let's do it, man. Let's do it. Thanks.
Awesome.
Cheers.